to make sure that whoever was still over there munching on Christmas goodies was coming to join us. Meeting's at order. We are thrilled to see you. We have a couple of announcements, which of course, I gotta do this. Hang on a minute. The California Garden Clubs is having their winter board meeting January 30th to February 1st. I know there are members of this group who've been actively involved with that group, and if there's anyone who's dying to help with this, they're calling for volunteers, let us know and we'll be happy to give you the information. We also, Penny Pines, where are you, Penny Pines? Oh, there you are. Did you tell me there were 2,500 trees we planted in the last 2 months? Our club did? Yes. Yay. Yay for us. And then we want to remind the executive committee that January 12th is our meeting, and the governing board committee is on the 19th. We heard there was a rumor floating around that if you really didn't need to come to the governing board meeting, that not much happens. Not true. We really need you there. Your voice as the governing board, as participants, helps us decide the future of the club. So please come. And, oops, the 12th is the executive committee and the governing board is the 19th.
Yeah, I actually sent out an email asking people if they could do the 5th instead of the 12th, but we're not going to go ahead with that, so it is the original date that's in the yearbook, the 12th.
Okay. Schoolyard Gardens. I think it's Susan who's going to come and talk.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Susan Vandendries, and this is Paula. We are representing the Schoolyard Gardening Committee, and as you know, this year we have had reduced funds, being dark for the last couple of years and not having big fundraisers. So we have come up with a wonderful fundraising event, and I hope you'll all sign up for it, and today is the deadline. This is a tour of Mount Soledad, including the grounds and their plans for the future. The very handsome Master Sergeant is going to show us around. The executive director, the on-site landscaper who will identify the flora and fauna and talk about their future landscaping plans. And then there will be some docents on hand to give us a little tour in smaller groups of all the plaques up there and the history of the memorial. So all the money goes towards schoolyard gardening. Today is the last day to sign up. We love schoolyard gardening. This is, I grew up on a farm upstate New York, and I just love being able to teach young people where food comes from. I hope you do too. So please sign up for it. You can do it online if you like. There's Sign Up Genius, and the code, if you go to the top of our webpage, it says Members Login, and the code to get in with a credit card there is VCGLJ, Village Garden Club, 1974. But you can also sign up today. It's $55. It includes a beautiful box lunch, a gift, and this private tour. Now, you can bring guests, neighbors. It makes great gifts. If you're not available on the 12th, give it to a friend, a neighbor, or somebody that you know well. You're welcome to bring your husbands and lovers, but I don't recommend both. So please, please sign up. It all goes towards schoolyard gardening, and we would love to have you join us. It's going to be a beautiful day. Thanks, Paula.
Yes, I think Cindy's. I think she's still here. Sure, thank you. Susan Oliver.
I feel like I came through the back door. Leah Higgins and I are chairing Marketplace this year, and last year, as you might know, and we had a wonderful Marketplace last month, thanks to our sweet member, Lynn Sauer, and all of you were so generous, and it 80% of the proceeds go to the vendor, Laura, and 20% goes to the club. So it's such a fun way to make money for the club and for you guys to get all the gifts. But in January, we are going to have a white elephant sale. So we are asking all of you to gather up your gifts that you get for Christmas that you don't want, or and probably that nobody will know, and or all the things like Lynn brought, things that you just don't use anymore in your house, and other people might find them just wonderful. So if you bring them, you will have a lot of tables in a round circle, and you can man your items, and all you do is give 20% of what you make to the club. It's an easy way and a fun way to make money. So I hope you all will remember in January. So thank you so much.
Okay, so just before we ask Kim to come and introduce our speaker, I want to remind you that for those of you who are attending the holiday lunch, we've got the elves next door setting up for that. We've had a few cancellations, so if you really wanted to come and you didn't get a chance to reserve, you could check with Margaret or Ann next door and come to that luncheon. I was here yesterday watching the two of them set up that whole room, and I was amazed at the energy that's there. Okay, Kim, you're on. Oh.
Hi. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Brandy Williams, an award-winning landscape designer and landscape contractor in Los Angeles. She is the founder of a boutique landscape company, Garden Butterfly, which is focused on creating small-scale and highly curated eco-friendly gardens and pollinator habitats. Founded in 2015, its mission has been to use beautiful design to inspire the public and transform the gardens of LA to support pollinators and save water. Brandy's creations include botanically diverse, succulent, native, and drought-tolerant mosaics for residential and commercial landscapes. Her work blends her horticultural and landscape expertise with an artist's eye to create permanent gardens and bespoke installations. Garden Butterfly has been featured in the LA Times, the San Diego Union Tribune, Dwell Magazine, and more, and it was a highlight of the 2022 Theodore Payne Foundation Native Plant Garden Tour. Brandy also has a new venture she's launching in 2023, and I have a little preview here that I will be bringing to our luncheon. Thank you, Brandy. We are grateful to Brandy for traveling to San Diego and presenting to our club today. And I'd like to especially thank one of our newest members, Karen Stone, for hosting an absolutely wonderful dinner for her last night with some of our members. And also, thank you so much, Marianne Brown, for putting Garden Butterfly and Brandy on our radar screen. I can't wait to hear Brandy's presentation today. Everyone, please welcome Brandy Williams.
The slides. You just have to push down. And you're on.
Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for that introduction. My grandmother always told me I have to stand to introduce myself in front of a crowd. So, hello, my name is Brandy Williams. I'm a licensed landscape contractor and landscape designer based in Los Angeles, California, by way of Compton, California, and I'm so glad to be with you today. Now, I'm just recovering from an injury, so that's why I have to be seated. So, okay. Okay. So, you know, I have notes and stuff, but as I was sitting and I met some of the ladies today and last night at dinner, I said, you know, we're just gonna go through the slides and, you know, just be natural, you know, so that's what we'll do. What you will see are slides from my garden in South Central Los Angeles. I just thought that would be, you know, best since I'm from LA and I'm coming here. I'm bringing what I've created at my space to you here today. The first slide is, what is your purpose? The reason why this is important, purpose, the reason for which something is done, the assignment within your purpose, because that is what I had to learn throughout this process, even getting started. What is my purpose? Actually, my mission. And I've just settled on pollinators and really communicating the importance of pollinators in our gardens, teaching them to youth and even ourselves, you know, as adults. Many of us aren't aware of the importance of these creatures and how they help us, how they work within the ecosystem, and how they are responsible for what we eat and just how we live. Here I am in my garden. So I am an outdoor living specialist. My degree is in Human Services Executive Leadership. The reason why that is important because I received my master's degree in 2014. I had no idea that I was going to be a landscape contractor at that time. So if you go back to that slide, what is your purpose? When you know who you are and when you just, you know, evaluate just your life and just, you know, who you are and just, you know, even us as women, you know, it's a little different for us. So that's what I had to do. You know, I'm in my 40s, so I'm getting, you know, late in the game. But I learned who I am. I'm still learning who I am, okay? But in doing that, it's just exciting and rewarding, and it just gives you that confidence for you to just move about and communicate with people when you know your purpose, when you know your mission. And, you know, I'm still learning it, but, you know, I'm, you know, filling in my shoes. So, but this slide is important because this is what I do. Almost every day I'm in my garden. I communicate about pollinators, but you can't communicate about something if you don't live it. So I had to create it. And once I created it, I had to see what was coming in. And then I wanted to, you know, invite those butterflies and those pollinators into the garden to become familiar with them so I can freely communicate about them. Okay, now this is cool. This is why, okay, so we all know Zillow, right? So your girl, she Googled her house on Zillow. And if you look close, let's see, well, there's a circle I highlighted, that's me. That tells you I'm actually living what I'm preaching. I had no idea. So I said, oh my God, I told my husband, I said, wait a minute. I said, this is me in our garden on Zillow. So I kid you not, this is just a little snapshot of Zillow. And when I'm in my garden, I often take my cell phone out and take pictures. You know, because again, I want to know what's going on in the garden, and so I can communicate about it. And that day, I took pictures with my Hustle cup, my Hustle coffee cup, but that was the same day that this picture was taken. So I just wanted you to see that. Isn't that cool? So I'm like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, so I wanted to show you guys that. I thought that was cool. As a human services, with my human services background, it's all about connecting with people, okay? So instead of, you know, working like in a government setting, I just transformed that into a business. And that's when I started Garden Butterfly in 2015. And all that information I learned in school, I transferred that into a career for myself. Also, just growing up, my grandmother always teaching us that you have to be community-based. You always have to give back. So my garden is one way that I give back to my community. In doing that slide you saw earlier, me sitting in the garden, there were two women one day, a couple months ago, walking by. Oh, I love your garden. I said, come on in, because that's what we do. Come on there in the garden, talking about the California native plants and succulents. And in talking to them about butterflies. As they left, maybe about 20 minutes later, the same ladies came back. One lady was in my yard. I was in the house, and I looked out the window, and I said, oh, there's a lady in my yard again. She actually brought this butterfly here. I took a picture of it. She saw it struggling underneath the truck. So she said, because of learning what we learned in your garden just maybe 10 minutes ago, she brought the butterfly back and thought it would do well in my garden. So, it's just community service. And it's all about us just, action and just taking that responsibility and working with what we have. So I wanted to show you that too. Community service, promoting environmental stewardship, and developing a relationship with your neighbors, with your garden. Here, Garden Butterfly Los Angeles, what I do is I've invited just youth in the neighborhood just to come and just to talk to them about the fruits and vegetables. Again, that's that community service, and how each of us can do that if we have the resources when we create these spaces of life with plants. This is another image, and again, this is just showing you garden butterfly just right in the neighborhood. And for 5 years, what I've done is just invited community for a garden tour within the garden. The California Native Plant Garden Tour, Theodore, Payne, we're featured, as Kim was saying. And here you have community service, again, just inviting servicemen, police officers, and just our firemen out just to let them know what's going on in our neighborhood, just in my garden. This is another image of the garden tour. So now, pollinators, the purpose and mission. As we have a purpose and a mission, so do pollinators. They are responsible for our nutrition through the process of animal pollination, and they are responsible for just healthy ecosystems. Meet the pollinators. Many aren't aware what pollinators are. Those are the bees, the bats, the butterflies, beetles, and some flies. And this is an image of a carpenter bee visiting a Pozo Blue salvia, California native plant, in Garden Butterfly, LA. They are responsible for fruits and vegetables. This is so important. If you enjoy coffee, if you enjoy strawberries, chocolate, think of the pollinators. When you go to a coffee shop, think of the pollinators. We need those pollinators in order to pollinate many of our food crops and also our ornamental plants. I have quite a bit of slides, so I'm going to go through this. When we design our gardens, we want to think of sustainability, but also regenerative gardens. I like to think of a garden as, in the state that it's in. Do you want to sustain that or regenerate that? So many of our gardens, we should regenerate. It's just starting over, bringing in new soil, feeding the soil because there's life in the soil, bringing in those native plants, those plants that conserve water, those drought-appropriate plants. That's how we partner with nature. And we want to attract and buddy up with beneficial insects. It's not about being afraid of the bees, it's just giving them their distance. So I like to think of the bee as just a confident, strong, beautiful, and talented talented woman. Give her her space and she won't bother you. Just let her be. Let the bee be. Honestly, and so I had to even train my mind. So I came up with a cool way. I said, wait a minute, just give me my space. I won't bite. So think, ladies, you're confident, you're talented. You don't want to be bothered. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're on a mission, you know your purpose, people should leave you alone, support you. But you have a job to do, just like our pollinators and our bees. So don't be afraid of them, just give them their space. Water conservation should be and is a California lifestyle with plant selection when we choose succulents, California native plants, and those California-friendly plants, those plants that we are inviting in that are non-invasive. And when we are designing and installing our landscapes, considering the water, the slow the runoff, you want to store the water for future and spread it throughout our gardens, including permeable surfaces and sinking the water into the ground and using the organic mulch, staying really away from the weed barrier. Weed barrier is good, but I'm one who minimizes, using the weed barrier because you think of it as there's life in the soil, and also when you want to plant for pollinators, you have those insects that live in the ground. So if you have the weed barrier, how are they going to get access to that soil? We live in a Mediterranean climate, California coastal region, and the climate is much different than a dry, arid desert. So I stay away from just planting all succulents. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just my personal preference. Because we are in a Mediterranean climate, you don't have to just plant all succulents. It's not, all agave or all cacti. You're wanting to include those California native plants. Those are the plants that the pollinators can benefit from. The caterpillars need those host plants. They can't do much with the succulents, so they do need those sage plants, the buckwheat plants. And that's this is the place that they're grown, so we want to make sure that we are incorporating those plants into our landscapes. This is a Mediterranean climate region, and when I first got into the industry, this stood out to me because learning that we share the same climate with Western and South Australia, the Western Cape of South Africa, Central Chile, and the Mediterranean basin. So those plants that I love, the lavender plant, come from the Mediterranean. Many of those aloes do come from South Africa, but that we can grow those same plants in our environment here on the coast. It just made sense to me. So being able to connect those dots were important because I just was wondering, why is it that I'm just drawn to those plants in South Africa, those plants in the western and south area of South Australia and also around the Mediterranean climate? Well, that's because we share the same climate. They grow well here. And you just have to be careful not to incorporate the non-invasive plants. You also have people who are purists. I'm not a purist. I'm one, to invite those Mediterranean climate plants, but in doing that, saying grow mostly native and just being careful with those that you're bringing in that are California friendly, if that makes sense. In designing and planning your landscapes, thinking about, workable environmentally friendly practices, the rain gutters used to divert water into the landscape. What type of mulch are you using? Is it the organic mulch? Again, that mulch that is protecting the soil, not using the landscape fabric, but just placing the organic mulch directly on top of the soil, and that organic mulch being the one that doesn't have the color, that dye in it. Also reducing overspray using drip irrigation. Sheet mulching is another way that you can use rather than killing turf with herbicide. Weed removal, least toxic herbicides if you have to use the chemicals. But what I do is just the old-fashioned physical method by just pulling the weeds as they come or just staying on top of it. Because when you pull up the lawn and you are planting those new plants, even though you are applying the mulch, more than likely you are going to have some weeds. So it's just about staying on top of it until those ground covers grow in, until the plants are fully matured to shade out the sun, which helps, weeds to grow. Let's see. Here is a picture of the traditional landscape at the top right, and then at the bottom, a sustainable landscape, which you will see in the next 2 slides. Well, the next slide. So let me go back here. At the top, you see the traditional landscape, and then the bottom, a sustainable landscape. This is our home in South Central Los Angeles. At the top, when we first purchased the home, it was a traditional landscape, and at the bottom, the sustainable landscape, regenerative landscape. So we removed the lawn and just planted plants. Let me see what I have typed here. Yep, regenerative landscape, yep. Oh, that is Bracteatus, the Petalanthus right here. Petalanthus bracteatus. I love that plant. It's a succulent. And it gets about it can get 8 feet tall. It's a statement plant, and hummingbirds love that plant. Every morning they just rest on the stems and they extract the nectar from the blooms. Or from the bracts. Well, the bracts protect the blooms. Sure. Petalanthus bracteatus. Pedillanthus. And then BRACT if you're Googling, and it'll bring up the rest of the word. Petalanthus bracteatus. Shall I continue with the next slide? Okay. So sustainable garden in urban LA. We are about to enter my garden. Pollinator-friendly landscape, selecting plants for pollinators. California coastal chaparral forest and shrub province. So here we have 2 images, one to the right of the monarch. It's just beautiful. This was actually happening on our rain barrel as I was just going out to garden. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing the right thing, yay. And the picture to the left is Epilobium canum. That one is Calistoga. And as you see, it's just full of pollen. So this picture is just the frontal view of our garden up close in South Central. This is the one that was in LA Times. And if you just see how the plants, it's just a scrapbook. That is how I always design, think of my creativity as a scrapbook, because I'm a scrapbook artist. That is what I do. And if you know scrapbooking, you're just, you just go with the pieces and you put them together and you just come up with just something that just flows and that is beautiful. And it's really just organized chaos, because some people will say, well, you wouldn't traditionally plant that plant there. Yeah, but it just works for me. This is my lab. I've taken time to figure out what grows well in my space. And even though you can hire a designer, to do these things for you, but in my opinion, it takes time. Someone really should come out, be there for a while, come back maybe a week or two, because you really want to understand what's going on in your area. This is about, 900 square feet, but there are a few microclimates here. And you could even see that in the slide here to the right. You see how it's shady? It's a north-facing landscape, but the high-pitched roofs create this microclimate right up against the house in that area where it's just full shade for most of the year. And then, when it's summer, the sun is higher in the sky, so we do get some sun there. But for the most part, it's shady on that side. But then a few feet up, you see how right at the end, it's full sun. And that right there, that ground cover that you see is the bee's bliss, California native bee's bliss. Most of the plants in this landscape are California native plants, although I do have Mediterranean plants in there and succulents. But I just wanted you to see how diversity can work. It did take time, but there are just certain plants that are just go-to plants. So wildlife habitat in South Central Los Angeles, the site conditions, plant selection, and the commitment to care for your garden created this wildlife habitat. And you can do that. Everyone can have a garden that is a certified wildlife habitat garden from the Wildlife Federation. I'm not a spokesperson for them. I'm just communicating the information. But if you just set up your landscape with larval host plants, you include a water source, provide cover and shelter with the plants that you choose, the ground cover plants, and you're just really not using all those chemicals, and just providing places for these pollinators to raise their young, and just sustainable practices, you can have a certified wildlife habitat. So I encourage you to look into that if you want to go that step, and just to show your commitment to the environment. Life in Garden Butterfly LA. So these are images of life in my garden. That 900 square foot area that you saw, all of these images are from that garden that I was able to take. You see the carpenter bees, one of the logs that we have in the yard, carpenter bees live in there, and once a year you can just see them coming in and out, and you see the shavings on the ground. And monarch butterflies are there, Gulf fritillary butterflies, and all kinds of beneficial insects. And spiders, oh my gosh, and hummingbirds. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but those spider webs that you see in your yard, hummingbirds use those to build their nests. So yeah, spider webs are good. Now, this is an image. I believe this is a hummingbird egg. I just believe so. This was right at the doorstep in an aeonium, a potted aeonium that we have, and I just took this image, and I just think so. If someone can confirm that, please let me know, but I think this is a hummingbird. What else would it be? What else would it be? So this is a picture of the California native plant Eriogonum grande rubescens. It is the red buckwheat perennial. It is a really great plant that looks beautiful in our South Central LA yard. It blooms, it has a long bloom time in summer, and the size is 1 foot high by 2 to 3 feet wide. And the bees love this plant. Wait, my braids, excuse me. The bees love this plant, and so do the people. It's beautiful. And it's right there at our sidewalk. Okay, this is special. So I have a few of these images. There's a lady, her name is Crystal Hickman. The name of her company is BSIP. I invited her to come to our garden, and she was able to, is that? Well, she was able to identify and photograph 7 different native bees in our yard. So all you have to do is plant them and they will come. Just plant them and those pollinators will come. And this is one of the images. Now this particular image was not in my yard. Others I'll show you, but it is of a buckwheat. So she shared this photo with me, and it is of the female carpenter bee. It's a small carpenter bee, which is a stem nesting bee that she was able to identify in our yard. This is an up-close picture of that red buckwheat in our garden. This is another angle of that red buckwheat in our garden. And it's actually, if you see kind of those little feathery leaves, that is the epilobium. It's a California native plant. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so you cut it back. Okay, do you see how the long stems? You want to cut it back to maybe about 6 inches or so, because they have the hollow stems, and then the bees, nesting bees, will nest in the stems. So yeah, you cut those back. Any of the plants that you have that have those, that have hollow stems or pithy stems, you want to leave some, I say about 6 inches, some people say 12, but just enough room so those bees will nest in them. They'll overwinter in them. And so the blooms, they will be spent, yeah, you know, I just cut it back, you know, so it'll be a little tidy, yeah. Because if you come to my garden now, yeah, you won't see any blooms. You'll just see the ground cover part of the plant. This is an up-close image of the red buckwheat bloom. It's just a beautiful plant. Okay, so this is the Palmer's Indian Mallow. I love this plant. It's an easy-growing plant. It's an evergreen. The leaves are like a grayish green color, and it feels like cotton. The leaves feel like cotton, but the blooms are beautiful, and it attracts native bees. So this is an image of a hoverfly that I was able to take of the same plant in my garden. But again, when you plant those native plants, you are attracting the monarch Gulf fritillary. These are the plants that grow, these are the butterflies and moths and beneficial insects and bees and birds that visit our South Central LA garden. Hummingbirds, black phoebe, the carpenter bee, leafcutter bee, bumblebee, a gray hair streak butterfly, the white-lined sphinx moth is often there, the swallowtail is there, dragonflies, hoverflies, ladybugs, damselflies, and the list goes on, but these are the ones that I've been able to identify. Again, we're doing this in South Central LA. This can be done everywhere, and it's just, you know, you don't have to be a scientist, you know, like Well, we're actually community scientists. You know, that's what we are, you know, but you can just do this and just take it upon yourself. Again, if you plant them, they will come. This is a picture, Crystal Hickman of BSIP. I mean, she just takes fabulous, you know, she actually is in the LA Times today. Yeah, there's an article about her today in the LA Times this morning. I saw it. So, but yes, she came to our garden, and now this was actual footage from our garden. This is that Indian mallow plant. This is another angle of the Indian mallow. Isn't that a beautiful plant? It's just gorgeous. So in this picture, there's the Indian mallow. There's that California native salvia bee's bliss right here at the bottom. And then there's an agave to the like mid left poking out there. This is the Epilobium catalina. It's semi-deciduous. It's a host plant, and it is a great hummingbird plant. Hummingbirds love the blooms. They are attracted to this plant, and is also a host plant for the white-lined sphinx moth. And all these pictures are from my garden. And of course, we have the narrow-leaf milkweed. We all know about the monarch butterflies and how we want to plant the milkweed. Knowing it's not the tropical milkweed we want to plant. We want to plant the California native narrow-leaf milkweed. And there are a few of them. Just, you know, go online to the Theodore Payne Foundation, learn about those milkweed if you aren't familiar with them, and learn which one grows in your area. But the narrow-leaf milkweed is what we have growing in our garden. Here's another image of white-lined sphinx moth, caterpillar. And here we go again. It's just, oh my gosh, this is just wonderful. Just how we can just do this. You don't have to go to a botanical garden. Your garden can be that. We have two varieties of the Epilobium canum. This is Calistoga. This plant tends to die back and go dormant in the winter, but it flowers late summer to fall. It is a perennial, and again, the hummingbirds just go bananas for this plant, and it grows well during the fall time. So when many of the California natives aren't in bloom, this plant is in bloom. So it's providing food all year round. You can do that with California natives. This is another image of that Epilobium. It's seeds freely, so, you know, be mindful of that. Here's another up-close image in the garden. Okay, so we are all familiar with the California poppy. This is California poppy, self-seeding annual, and it looks beautiful. I love this because the seeds, I just, you know, spread the seed. I wanted it to bloom in between the bee's bliss, and you see how that does. You know, you plan that out, and I think it looks great. Now, in this area, I have a gravel, so even, you know, your wildflowers can grow within gravel. This is the California poppy and yarrow, the common yarrow, on our parkway. You know, a lot of people aren't sure which plants to grow on the parkway. So yarrow, I just thought it was a great plant to grow. You know, you have your dogs, you know, they do come by, but it has done well. It stood up against that dog, the dog visits. Okay, this is another image of the salvia bee's bliss growing the creeping sage. You know, they have different varieties of the California native sage. I love this plant. It grows about like 9 feet wide in our yard, and it is a statement plant. Everyone is attracted to this plant, and also the bees. So here's that certified wildlife habitat sign. So if we can all, once we, incorporate and plant our gardens, you want to go get that sign to encourage people to be stewards. That's who we are. We are environmental stewards. So that's what we are, and this is just one way just to have that badge. Okay, the Achillea millefolium common yarrow on the parkway. Beautiful parkway plant. Am I going too fast? Okay. Lewis Hamilton apricot mallow. Now, I planted him, and I thought it died, but it just goes to show the power of plants, the power of California native plants. A year later, about 2 years later actually, I saw it just sprouting up between my Salvia bee's bliss, that ground cover. So you just never know. We aren't more powerful than nature. We have to partner with it, but nature will do what it wants to do. This is an example of the jelly bean yellow monkey flower. Many people do have a hard time with growing this plant. There are different varieties, but I've had success with the jelly bean yellow monkey flower. And I love how it grows with the California poppy when the California poppy comes back every year. So we all have, well, not we all, but many of us have the areas in our yard where we don't get that much sun. Well, the heuchera is a really great plant for that, and it's a really great ground cover. So this heuchera is growing right up against our house, which is north facing. It doesn't get that much sun near a water source. We have a recirculating fountain. So the heuchera does require a little bit more water, and even that, the fountain water that splashes off, it does help, So you see how it grows in some shade, and it does produce some blooms. And there's a caterpillar. Here's an up close of the caterpillar dining on the heuchera blooms. Another parkway, the parkway is just so important to me because many people neglect the parkway. You can do some really nice things. Of course, you have to be mindful of what your city will allow you to plant on the parkway. I would never suggest those pokey plants on the parkway, though. I'm always thinking, what if a kid were riding their bicycle and they fall? You don't want a pokey plant there and the kid falls on that plant. Or, someone is getting out of their car. You don't want a danger zone for someone. So no pokey plants on the parkway. But there are some California native plants that do well. For me, the common yarrow and the buckwheat, which is a really important plant. It is a great source for our pollinators. The caterpillars rely on this plant. It's a host plant. And this is an example of the seasonal changes of California native plants. This is the Eriogonum fasciculatum on the parkway. Before, let me go back. You see how it was all nice and just snowy with beautiful white blooms. And then as the season changes, those blooms turn into the rust color. So, it provides the seeds, the food, 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 for the birds. Here's an up-close picture of the buckwheat again with the bee, and I believe that's a honeybee. Now this is a picture of Miss Crystal. Any images you see with the bee sip at the bottom, she photographed this picture. Now this one was not a photograph taken in our garden, but it is a photograph of one of the bees that she was able to identify in the garden. So this is a male carpenter bee, which is a stem nesting bee. Now here's an image of Achillea moonshine, the yarrow moonshine, which is one of my favorite. It is not considered a California native plant. And I think I've read, some people consider it. I don't think so, but yeah, so I just say it's a non-native plant. I don't see it on the Theodore Payne website, this particular plant, but it does grow well, and it is considered a California-friendly plant. I love it because when you dry the flowers, it just brings these beautiful dried floral arrangements. So I love this plant. And it does attract pollinators too. And it does well in garden. Here's an up-close picture of the yarrow moonshine. So this is an angle, another angle of the garden. I wanted to show you the mix of California native and California friendly plants. I thought this would give you a good idea. You have the Petalanthus bracteatus, another one which is here, that we have on the other side that you saw earlier. The leucadendron right next to it. Down below is the, this isn't important. Okay, down below, there's the yarrow moonshine. It's not in bloom. Here at the bottom to your left, there's a California native sage. And then right above that to the left is a succulent. That is the Kalanchoe paddle plant. And then right above that to the right is that Salvia bee's bliss. So it just gives you an idea of how I've been able to mix plants in a small space, and they're just growing together. And also, if you can see those logs there and how, you know, you're incorporating those logs for wildlife, places for them to hide, and that organic mulch there. There's no weed barrier. It's just the organic mulch laid on top of the soil. It feeds the soil because there's life in the soil. Insects are in that soil, and then you need that soil for the plants. Let's see. Yeah. And then here to the right, way up to the right, there's just a little deck that we built, and that's just one place I have coffee and just invite guests in. So like literally walking down the street, hi Brandy, want to come in? Come on. And then we're just going through the garden. So yeah. So this is an image of California lilac, the Yankee Point, and it's a ground cover flowering winter through early spring. And this is on our parkway. Actually, Theodore Payne captured this shot when they came to my garden. So this is the Yankee Point on the parkway just at high noon. So you see how it's just doing well there. This is a ground cover. This is, oh my goodness, I forgot the name of this plant. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the plant. We're going to come back to this. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of the plant. So much going on. Okay, we're going to come back to this slide. Oh my, and it's right here. Oh my gosh, you guys forgive me. I forgot the name of this plant. Can someone tell me the name? It's a California native. Okay, we'll come back to it. But this plant here is an understory plant of the Salvia pozo blue, which is right above it, and the Petalanthus bracteatus, which you see here at the top. Oh my gosh, what's the name of this plant? Oh gosh, okay, we'll come back to it. Growing food in urban small spaces. So not only do we grow plants for pollinators and wildlife, we grow plants for people too. So you can grow all this in your space, all for the price of whatever the price is going to be and your time. So Mediterranean herbs, we built this out of juniper wood. We have culinary sage, oregano, rosemary, and chamomile, and just popped a California native white sage right in there just to attract the beneficial insects, which help, with your garden. So it's just a way to be creative and just to see what works. And it's all working in a raised bed. And this bed is positioned on the side of our house. This is an aerial view. So this is in the backyard. You have a banana tree back there, and our backyard, it's all concrete, but right up against the house you have like small areas of where you can plant a garden, which we did, but just incorporated raised garden beds, and this is where we have our food growing. And I'm showing you this picture for a reason. I think it's going to be the next slide. Okay, of course. Well, we eat back here too, and just that's what you should do. You have your gardens for your family and for you to come out for lunch and stuff. This is why I'm showing you this. So this is Crystal, and she came and she's actually photographing. And in this picture, I'm going to go back. So she was right up in that area up there. This is her, and she's identified some native bees. She was just snapping away. And this is one of the actual pictures that she took. Yep, so this is a leafcutter bee that she took of the African basil. This is an African basil plant that you saw earlier. So here we are with the succulents. So succulents are my thing. So I work with a lot of succulents in pots, doing potted plants. And they are just, extreme survivors. And I know in this area, succulents grow. You guys have a lot of succulents in your garden. So I'm not teaching you anything, but I just wanted to share with you. So this is in my garden too. The clay pots, the porosity of clay allows the moisture and air to penetrate, and just making sure when you are planting your succulents or even if you're planting California native plants, you're using those plots that have the drainage holes. And an example of just a palette garden that I designed with succulents. And this is another image of a bee that Crystal was able to photograph from a succulent plant, one of the blooms, a senecio. See, if you plant them, they will come. So here's Dudleya, a potted succulent in our garden, California native succulent plant. Here's some more succulents potted in the garden. Here we are again. I kind of feel like, I'm preaching to the choir with you guys with the succulents, but I just wanted to show you what's going on, what we're doing in South LA. So this is a raised bed with a mix of succulents and some non-native plants. but here's another water-wise garden. And this isn't in my yard. This is one of my designs in Torrance. So wildlife habitat, here's Theodore Payne just photographing away in the yard. Here's another angle right at the entry of the stairs, and you see how you have the boulders and the lighting, and there's a California native and non-native mix of plants there too. Now, I snapped this yesterday before I came because I just wanted to give you something, like just so you can see what's going on in the garden. So this is, 24 hours ago. We have California native, 2 California native plants. We have a lavender, aeonium, Mexican daisy, and let's see, yeah, I said all of them, yeah. But all growing together. Here's a close-up of a mix of plants. There's just so much you can do. So we're about at the end of the slide presentation. Just wanted you to see a mix of plants here. There's the kalanchoe and the salvia bee's bliss, and that Indian mallow to the top right, California native plant. And just, this is an example of some succulents. And here's the, okay, so this was so cool. So it was just an honor to be featured in Dwell magazine. But this is a South Central LA garden that I designed and I co-installed with another contractor. But it's all about your gardens should be designed for enjoyment and gathering and to partner with nature. And this was just a great shot. These are my clients and their little puppy. But during the pandemic, they were able to take advantage of being outside in the garden, and she shared that with me, and that made me feel so good. You know, so our gardens are just to, it's not just like a showpiece, but they're really for you to enjoy and be creative and read and learn and take naps and just, you know, eat outside and then just enjoy what God has placed here for us to enjoy. This is another shot of that same garden in South LA, and this is located in South Central too. And this is another shot with succulents. And their backyard it's pretty small, but you can do so much. So this is a succulent garden with Diamondia. Diamondia, I really like that plant. It's a go-to ground cover for me that, you know, I always, you know, steer people to, especially like if you have a driveway and you have a garden area there and you're parking in your driveway now, so you're not pulling all the way in your garage, but you want to step on something and you don't want to use gravel. I think Diamondia is a great plant to use for that. And you can see that there. So here's some more succulents. Succulents are my thing. And this is a potted Japanese maple. I thought this was important because it was a kind of a trouble corner. We couldn't figure out what to do. But this worked, and it just really came out pretty nice. So much you can do just with potted plants. And that's the end of my slideshow. Oh! Yes, and what they're doing is, let's see, 2 neighbors have, which is great. And, you know, a lot of people are just asking questions because it is new for people. You know, we're used to lawns. And so just, you know, people are asking questions and even just inching their way into it by just, you know, starting with potted plants. And, you know, because of the water restrictions, people really started to ask questions, you know, so, yeah. Yes. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. And I think ours have lifted well, you know what? I'm on the mic, so I'm not going to say much. I really don't know, but we're supposed to still be on that water restriction. Yes. Yes. Oh, the question was what is my take on the bee hotels? You know, I don't have a solid answer on that because I'm still on the fence with that. You know, what I've been told and what I've read is, you know, they can harbor disease, so I'm not really sure. I just think that your garden can be the hotel, to be honest with you. So, but that's a really great question, you know, because people want to know, and they're cute. You know, they're... Oh, yeah, they do. But even just like with the hummingbird feeders, like I don't use hummingbird feeders because my thing is you plant the plants and then they'll come. So, but if you can't plant the plants, you know, maybe you have a balcony and, you know, you're limited with what you can plant there. But, you know, hummingbird feeders are, you know, good too. So I'm not sure about that one though, but that is a great question. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so Paradise Kellogg Garden Products has a really great fertilizer pellets, natural pellet fertilizer that I do use. I rarely fertilize the California natives, so I use that mainly for my potted succulents. And even a few times throughout the year, I'll just I'll just apply some of that fertilizer in like the non-native plants in my garden. But Kellogg has a real great line of fertilizer, and Paradise is what I use. And it comes in a really pink, pretty bag too. So it makes it even cuter to use. Yes. Okay, that's another great question. So it all depends. Sometimes that one time it'll do well. Different plants take time, so sometimes it's 6 months to a year. I will say this, the Theodore Payne Foundation has a printout. If you go on their website, they have a great resource to tell you what, you know, when is the great period for a plant to be established. So think of it like 6 months to a year or 2 years. 2 years is a good time. So like for me in my garden, 2 years is when I really started to see plants, you know, take form, and for me to really get used to what was going on. So yeah. Yes. Ma'am? Hand water. So there's no irrigation in our landscape, so all those plants, Mother Nature and hand water. And they've done so well because I took the time to learn what was going on. So if you ask me how often do I water when I think they need to be watered. You know, plants, they communicate with you. They tell you when something isn't right. So you know. We were gone this summer, even with all that drought, we were gone a few times this summer, and every time we came back, oh my gosh, and the garden looks like that. But that's because I learned my garden, I established the plants, I knew, what was going on. So really after 2 years, I had an idea. And then sometimes in the summer, I'll, apply some water. It all depends, but all hand water and Mother Nature. Yes. Oh, thank you. The native plants? Yes. Okay. Oh, reef it. Okay, so my garden is a scrapbook garden. Okay, so it just naturally does what it does, and I just kind of know where things should go. The average person would say that plant shouldn't go there, Brandy, because it's going to get 3 feet, and I'm like, or 6 feet. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it works. So I do, prune, a little bit just to keep it together. Yes, if it bothers you, you always want to plant with the space. So if a plant is going to grow 6 feet, you really should leave that space. And knowing if you're going to plant one plant here for a while, it's going to be just bare around, but that's why you have that, your ground cover, your mulch to suppress the weeds. And over here, you're going to plant that one and it's going to be small. But after a couple years, they are going to grow together if you plant them appropriately. So with mine, it's just an example of what you can do. If you crowd them, I just like to crowd. Everyone doesn't do that. I'm not suggesting you do that. You have to crowd with care, but you really should plant according to the space, their growth rate. The Theodore Payne has great resources to assist you with how to do that and encouraging you to do that. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, well, see, if you saw the Salvia Bee's Bliss, if you remember that plant in my presentation, the ground cover, that plant gets 9 feet wide. One. And that was one plant. If you saw, that's the one that's in the LA Times. If you look at it again, you want me to go back to it? Okay. So here, let me see. So the Salvia Bee's Bliss, that plant, it's 9 feet wide, tall. I meant wide. It's 9 feet wide in my garden. Let me go all the way back. And yeah, but now again, there are different types of buckwheat. There are different types. Let's see. Wait. There are different types, but okay, here we go. Okay. This plant here is 9 feet wide, okay? And that's one plant. But I knew that, I knew I wanted a plant to take up that entire area. They have different plants, with different sizes. So you just really be conscious in knowing, well, if my space is 5 feet wide, and I just want to get one plant that's going to maybe grow 4 feet to give me some space around. But give or take, it'll grow a little, if it says 4 feet, it may grow 5 feet. It may even grow 6 feet in good condition, maybe. But just give or take. I do some pruning here because it is right at the sidewalk, and I don't want it to impede on the sidewalk, so I do just pinching. And when I'm saying pruning, I'm not hacking back. It's just really just, giving it a nice gentle prune, just to keep it on the landscape. But yeah, so you just have to know. I mean, I'd suggest like easy plants to work with, like the sage plant. If you like sage, learning, the different sizes. First, what is your area? Okay, well, what sage can grow 4 feet wide? And, learn about that plant before planting it. Is it the right condition, for your soil? Does it get the right amount of sun? Because you do need sun for those plants. Sage is good. Buckwheat is good. It's great, actually, a great plant too. And the Indian mallow, I really like that. I mean, those are 3 easy California native plants I would suggest to start with, and just learning about the sizes. Just starting there. But of course, a good ground cover. And I think there is a California native sage that doesn't get this wide, but Theodore Payne Foundation, if you just contact them or go on their website and they'll show you. And I'm all about resources because I don't know everything, but I'm all about resources. It's all about us working together and me learning, different organizations that I can steer someone to who will have the answers, because I don't know everything. But that's how I was able to get to this point, because of resources. Oh, you're welcome.